Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Rumina Nursing Wear's Pump and Nurse Collection. All-in-one products that you can both breastfeed as well as pump hands-free in. And we'll hear more about Rumina after our review of the week.
Yeah, I've got the review of the week, and this is an older review, but I was going through, and sometimes I'll read some of the older ones sometimes and be like, oh, like before we were doing reviews of the week. Oh, so this is from OK Ducray. This podcast came at the perfect time for me. I finally gave up on trying to sleep train my baby. The first night we co-slept the whole night, and I nursed her. We both got the best sleep in 4 months. This episode just validated what I was feeling and gave me so much confidence that my instincts were right. Thank you, ladies, so much. And that is like, I love the validation. You know, I love it when moms can tell us that they're validated by decisions that they were making, that they weren't sure were right for, you know. It's like, you're probably right. You know?
I know, because all the things we're constantly being told that we're wrong about things. Like, you know, all those like instinctual feelings that we have, we're just told to ignore them. Mm-hmm. But they're usually right.
They are usually right. Absolutely. So keep on keeping on, people. Follow those instincts. But send us reviews while you're following your instincts. That should lead you to the iTunes. Give us a review. And we would love to read yours on the air too. But we also really like to know what you like about the podcast and things that you want us to talk about. Because a lot of times people will make suggestions about what they want to hear. And we'd love to be able to do that for you too. So go to iTunes, leave us a review, and we'll put you up. And what are we going to talk about today? I know what I'm lying because I know. But it's a good one. It's good.
Yeah, so let's talk about like breastfeeding toddlers and small children, because I know we've talked about it before, and we've talked about some of the criticisms that people have of it and how they're not true. And we talk about comebacks. And we talk about all these things around breastfeeding beyond infancy. But we never really talk about like what are the good things about it and why are people doing it. You know, it's not, you know, we talk so much about, you know, this is your decision, this is your business, and you don't have to explain it to anyone. And those are true. But some people even listening might not know really exactly why people are doing this, why people are making this decision to continue to breastfeed into toddlerhood and sometimes even into childhood. Mm-hmm. And I breastfed my first until he was 6.5, and I breastfed my second until he was 4.5. And it wasn't because I was addicted to breastfeeding.
That you just wanted to piss people off.
Yeah,
right?
It wasn't just because I wanted to piss people off, although that is a great benefit to me. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to flash my boobs at people. It's not that I can't get him to stop if I wanted. You know, there's actual real reasons why this worked for us and why it was such a wonderful thing for us and for so many people. And if it's not for you, that's cool. I'm not trying to like convince anybody, but I think that there's a lot to it, a lot of really great things to it that I think people might not know.
Right. Now, before we get into that piece of it, let me just say that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends breastfeeding to 2. And the World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding to 3. So they're not just like pulling that number out of a hat for no, you know, like it is recommended to breastfeed your child into toddlerhood. That is recommended for your child. And there's a reason why that's recommended. And people really like, you know, I know a lot of people that follow to the letter what their pediatrician tells them. And when it comes to breastfeeding, though, nobody seems to remember that it is recommended to breastfeed your child into toddlerhood because they get benefits from it still.
Right. And then you have pediatricians that are that are licensed through this, organization that actually recommends breastfeeding until 2 or 3 and beyond, until is mutually, as long as it's mutually beneficial for both the, parent and the baby, which is, I think is how it was worded.
Yeah.
But then you have, the pediatrician that's like, well, after 6 months, it's not, there's no more nutritional benefit anymore. What? Like where in the world is this information coming from? Because this is just so wrong.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and that's, I think, one of the biggest things that I think people really, one of the great things about continuing to breastfeed for as long as you like, is that there is so much nutritional value to it. There's, it's not that it doesn't ever turn to water.
No.
It never just, and by the way, water is good for you. It never turns, it never turns bad. There's always an abundance of nutrients that your child is getting through the breast milk that they, that will benefit their health for as long as it goes on.
And it's age appropriate for them, like your child, especially after a year and into age 2 and into age 3 or whatever, wherever they are, they're at continually changing stages of development that your breast milk is still going to accommodate. And your breast milk is still way more absorptive as far as vitamins, nutrients, all of those things than any food that you're giving them. So it's never going to lose its benefit.
Yeah, never. No, and I think there's like the research that's done. I think there's some research done on like breast milk in the second year of life, and they can see how the nutrients become more concentrated. Because your child is starting to have more solid foods, and they're starting to have other things part of their diet. And so your body just knows this. And so it starts to concentrate all of those nutrients down to a smaller amount of milk so that they're still getting, even with the less breast milk that they're drinking than they were when they were, say, 6 months old, they're still getting all of those nutrients.
Right.
I mean, so even your body is just like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be giving this, like, even more concentrated breast milk to this older toddler.
Oh my gosh, nutritionally. I mean, and that is just one small benefit of, extended breastfeeding, but nutritionally it's just, and I used to tell people too, like, when your child gets to be over the age of 1, they're walking, they're into so much stuff, they're touching everything, putting it in their mouth, like that, you're giving them that added immunity too.
Well, and that's the other one is the disease protection, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to get sick less frequently. And when they do get sick, it might be less, it might not last as long or be as bad. Right. And when you're sick, just keep breastfeeding. People wonder that too. Like, should I keep breastfeeding or should I keep my distance? No, man. Breastfeed as much as you can because they're getting all those antibodies.
Yeah. And, I've had mothers tell me that their child got really sick. Maybe like after the age of a year or whatever. And they were so thankful that they were still breastfeeding because it was the only thing their child could tolerate. It kept them hydrated. It kept them nourished. It was fighting that illness. That was the only thing that their child was able to take.
Right. And it'll calm them down.
Right.
It keeps them more like, relaxed and comforted.
Yep. I remember one mom specifically, she was like, thank God I was still breastfeeding. And like, you never want to plan for anything like that, but it was something that happened that, they were able to work through. And the breastfeeding was, it was with them. So they were able to at least still be giving the baby that nourishment.
Yeah. And then cognitive function. This is one of the things that breast milk helps develop all of these vital organs in your body. Mm-hmm. And it will continue to do that as long as you breastfeed. And it'll do it even better the longer you do it. Now, I'm not saying that you have an underdeveloped brain if you did not breastfeed, until your child was 7 years old. That is not what I said.
No.
But it will benefit as long as you do. And what about because there's all this is one of the things that people say is that, you're causing psychological damage by breastfeeding these older kids. That's inappropriate. They're going to be weird. They're, it's not normal. You're hurting them. But it's actually the completely opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, breastfeeding is linked to, better outcomes for social development and emotional stability and independence. Because that's the other thing that people misunderstand is well, you're going to make them dependent on you. They're going to be so needy if you keep breastfeeding them. Actually, the more you meet your child's emotional needs when they're young, the more independent they will be.
Exactly.
Later in life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is just true. This is just development. This is just human development. We know this to be true.
And then you got my pet peeve lately of why are we encouraging babies to try to fend for themselves?
Yeah.
Why we say, oh, well, we don't, you don't want the baby to be too attached to you. You don't want them to really, to need you. So you shouldn't be doing it. It's like they're little children,
They do need you.
They do need you. Yeah. There's no getting around that. I'm sorry. They cannot drive themselves to Cub Scouts. They are not doing they can't make their own dinner. You still need to take care of them. So let's take the most nurturing thing you can do out of the equation. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, you don't want to encourage all of that neediness. Because But yeah, you do actually. You do. The more you do encourage it, the more you meet those needs, the more that you foster that dependence, the benefits you're going to see. You're going to see such great benefits later in life. And it's so hard to wait that long, because it's it's true. It comes later because they're needy for a really, really, really long time.
They are.
A really long time. And when we talk about meeting those emotional needs, we do mean for a long time, for their entire childhood. And they will become such well-adjusted, emotionally stable adults.
I was reading something recently that said it was really, really interesting. A lot of it was about the having babies way back when, and then comparison to having babies now, and how the mother is responsible for nourishing relationships. That is just how it is. That is how nature has it set up, that the mother is responsible for nourishing relationships in her child. And if that doesn't happen, your child grows up to not have good relationships. The potential
this is the
there.
First relationship they have.
Right.
All future ones are based on this one.
So it is really, and it's funny because I see all the time, and I just can't even get into these Facebook arguments because it just, it makes me sick. But I've seen a couple recently about, mothers feeling like they were shamed into breastfeeding and all this stuff, which quite honestly, that's a whole discussion for a different podcast. But, people are saying, you know what? When your kid's 30, nobody's ever going to know if they were breastfed or not, which I think is just bullshit because you can tell. It doesn't come down to that's just ignorance on the part of people not realizing all the benefits that go along with breastfeeding. And sometimes people will say, oh, I wasn't breastfed. I turned out fine. Really? How's your relationship with your mom? How is, your gut health? How is your cognitive ability? Things that you don't realize are connected there. Go all the way back to infancy. That is where you're setting up your life at infancy.
Right. You can that very first relationship, when your needs are not met through that very first relationship, and you can meet those needs not breastfeeding. Right. Let's be clear. Yeah. If you weren't able to breastfeed and you didn't want to breastfeed, there's all kinds of reasons why people don't breastfeed, and that's fine. But when those needs are, breastfeeding is one wonderful way to meet the needs. And it's, this is a breastfeeding podcast, so this is what we're talking about.
But we're also talking about how people say, "Oh, you don't want your kid to need you," so it kind of comes in with that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if you don't meet the child's needs, they will have problems. This is what we're seeing in the world, right? We're seeing a bunch of people who didn't have their needs met as children. You can see this. I was, we were at a park yesterday, and where there were these kids. My kids were playing, and there were other kids there, and these other kids they came up to the group of kids, and they were throwing wood chips and sand, and they're it was very I don't know what was going on, and the parents, there were a group of women that were sitting on a bench that I think were with them. They were definitely with them because we were the only ones there, and they were completely not paying any attention at all. And my son was getting so upset, and I said, I know it's very upset when people are not nice to you and don't know how to relate to other people. And I said, he was so mad. And I said, listen, these kids don't just know to be mean, Mm-hmm. They're learning this from somewhere. They've learned it from somewhere. I said, we can take a moment and maybe even feel sad that this is how they're navigating relationships and interacting with people. And you put it to him like that, it was just I just wanted him to not be so ragey. But he was okay. He was well, I'm kind of mad at the parents. And I was yeah.
Right.
I mean, let's take it there maybe. If you're not meeting your children's needs, which you can meet in various ways, we're talking about breastfeeding. But when those needs are not met, you will see it through life. You can look around your office where you work, or your group of friends, or your government, or, your, just the world around you. Mm-hmm. People are not just born a-holes.
Right.
They get this way because their needs were not met. Okay, that's my soapbox.
It is, and
I do this. I'm a social worker. I've worked in social work since I, graduated from college, and I see it all the time.
Oh my God!
I've seen this all over, and I've seen it with kids. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
this is how people get to be dysfunctional adults. It starts in childhood.
It does. It absolutely does. And kind of to piggyback on what you were saying about you can nurture a child without breastfeeding them. And I have said this to my husband before. I know he wasn't breastfed, but he is probably one of the most, he's very kind-hearted. He's very, calm. He's very laid back. He's, very successful in what he does. And I remember saying to him one time, you could tell he's the way he is because of the support he received from his family. I mean, he did make, significant, he, as a dad by the age of 19 and, things like that. But they were so supportive with every single thing that he ever did in his life. And they were there for everything. And he has these wonderful memories of vacations and, card games and growing up and, that is nurturing. That is nurturing your child. Mm-hmm. And breastfeeding wasn't involved there. And it was 55 years ago or whatever. But that is nurturing your child. That was the first relationship that he had. And his mother, made that very, very, very nurturing. And it did not hinder him at all. He just continued to do and, become successful because he was always encouraged to do more, be more. You're wonderful. You're a great son. You're this or that. And, you can nurture kids from a very early age. in many ways. You have to
meet their needs. You have to. Otherwise, it will follow them. Mm-hmm. And then it will affect everyone in their life as adults.
Exactly.
And then that's what you put into the world.
And
let's give the world a bunch of people who are going to save it.
Oh my God, I know.
Oh my God, we need some help here. We need some people who are having their needs met. We're so back to breastfeeding, because this is a breastfeeding podcast. We're talking about breastfeeding into toddlerhood and into childhood, like I did with my oldest son. Breastfeeding is for me, it was one of these easy ways to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying breastfeeding is easy. So hold on a second. It's hard, but it's all hard. No matter what you do, it's hard. It was one of these things that I felt was still really benefiting my kids. They were still really into it, and even when I was working to create those boundaries for myself and trying to keep my own head on so that I wasn't losing my mind and trying to create some of that space and stuff I needed for myself, they still seemed like they really, really needed it and wanted that relationship. And so I worked really hard to let them wean on their own. And again, that was just like one of the tools that I think was that helped me be able to just meet their needs. And now they don't breastfeed. And so I have to do it other ways. And of course, there's all kinds of things that work together. It's not just one thing or the other.
Right.
But this is something that's gone on, breastfeeding toddlers and small children is something that's gone on since humans have been on Earth.
Oh my gosh.
And it's gone on, and it goes on still in other cultures. I mean, we don't see it here because we have turned it into this thing that's icky and inappropriate and gross, and it's sexual if they're too old, and all of these weird things that we've done to the female body, basically. But this is actually normal. Breastfeeding into toddlerhood and small childhood is really, really normal. It's very biologically normal.
It is biologically normal. It is what's supposed to be happening. Should we hear from our sponsor?
Yes, we should.
We should.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rumina Nursing Wear's Pump and Nurse Collection. Are you looking for a bra or tank top you can do both breastfeeding and hands-free pumping in? Don't want to completely disrobe to put on a different pumping top? Rumina Nursing Wear's Pump and Nurse Collection has helped thousands and thousands of breastfeeders reach their breastfeeding goals by offering all-in-one products that breastfeeders can easily nurse and pump hands-free in. With their simple hands-free pumping design, breastfeeders don't have to worry about disrobing completely or putting on additional pumping straps or tops. All of Rumina's products are comfortable to wear all day and supportive for busy, multitasking people like you. Badass Breastfeeding listeners can receive an exclusive 20%. This is a deep discount. 20% discount on Rumina's Pump and Nurse Collection by visiting their website, pumpandnurse.com, and using promo code BB19, as in Badass Breastfeeder, BB19. And this promo code and link can be found on our website at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, along with all of our other sponsors, all of our breastfeeding resources, all of our episodes, as well as information about scheduling your lactation consultation with Dianne.
So biologically normal. If you say that to somebody, I don't even sometimes know what to say. When somebody says, oh my gosh, I could never, how could somebody breastfeed that long? They're going to psychologically damage their child. Like, I don't even know what kind of response to give that person because it's such an idiotic thing to say.
Totally.
It's so ignorant. And if you say, well, it's biologically normal, I don't think people really understand what that means.
No, I don't think they do either. It means that you were born, that they're born to breastfeed, and they will stop on their own eventually when they're ready. But and that's not to say that you can't stop before, because you certainly can.
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah. But let's talk for a second too about the mothers. We talk a lot about the baby. Of course, there's always benefits for the babies, but there is more research coming out now all the time about how breastfeeding duration is really the key to a lot of these benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And, it used to be that we would say, oh, any amount of breastfeeding, you're going to get benefit, which is true. That is still very true. Any amount of breast milk that you can give to your child is beneficial. Any amount is beneficial to your child. But the more breast milk they get, the longer you breastfeed them, the better the benefits for you and your child. So if somebody says, oh, well, I breastfed my child, but they're still sick all the time. How long did you breastfeed for? Oh, a month and a half. Okay. So great. I'm glad that you were able to do that, but there's more benefits the longer you breastfeed. The duration is really, really important. And we know now how breastfeeding can help moms with breast cancer and cervical cancer and osteoporosis and, all these things that happen later, that can happen potentially, come up later in life, that now your body has this extra protection from. And the more babies you breastfeed, the better, and the longer you breastfeed them, the better your protection is against these things.
Yep. I agree. Yes. So, yeah, there's research on a whole bunch of different kinds of cancers, osteoporosis, like you said, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, even insulin requirements for diabetics are lower with people who are breastfeeding, who have breastfed for, like you said, the longer the duration, the better outcome.
Right.
And there's also the benefit of delaying fertility and keeping which is it's not a birth control, but, it will help delay fertility to give your body that time to recover. And tandem nursing, first of all, tandem nursing is totally doable. Breastfeeding through pregnancy is safe. And if you continue that breastfeeding relationship into like future family planning, there's a lot of benefits to the tandem nursing too.
There is, yeah.
Especially with the introduction of a new family member, and how a lot of people get worried, like, oh, there's they'll be jealous if they're still breastfeeding. They're all of this, but really it's the opposite. It really helps. They continue to have that relationship with you and that closeness and that security through that transition. And it can, that can benefit the whole family.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So what do you say to somebody who says, well, you shouldn't be breastfeeding past a year. It's not doing anything for your baby.
I would say that science and anthropology and history and psychology and all of the major fields of study disagree with you.
Yeah.
That there's evidence, solid scientific evidence in all of the major fields of study about humans that say that this is true, that it's beneficial, that it's not harmful, that it's wonderful, and there will be wonderful lifelong benefits to it.
And there really is. Now that my kids are getting older, I see benefits, that the kind of like emotional type of benefit that, how you were saying earlier, it takes so long to see those things, but I do see them in my kids, and it does make me feel really good that I gave that to them, because it's really important. And I think society just does not, there really is no value on that in our society, which is why it makes me so upset when you see things like, oh, you don't have to breastfeed. Don't let people guilt you into it. Don't let people say anything to you. And it's like, no, we don't want mothers to feel guilty about breastfeeding at any stage, no matter where they are in it. But we want mothers to be supported. And that's really what it comes down to. If you are breastfeeding into, 1.5, 18 months, 22 months, 2 years, 3 years, you don't want to feel like you have to hide that from your pediatrician because you don't know what kind of pushback you're going to get.
Right. Right. I mean, if you think that if the breastfeeding relationship is still, if your child is still interested and you're still interested, then it is normal and it is beneficial and it is totally appropriate to continue that relationship.
Absolutely.
And they will wean. I mean, some later than others. Some so late that, people will be like, I'm just not. Some people said to me, still say to me, I could never breastfeed a 6-year-old. I just couldn't do it. And that's fine. That's a kid. That's a boy right there breastfeeding. But if you can and you want to and you think it's benefiting your family, then you got to screw what everyone else is saying.
Right. And that's kind of what it comes down to.
Because they're just wrong.
Yeah. Don't make decisions based on what somebody else is telling you. This is a decision between you and your baby.
Especially if it's about breastfeeding and then something about breastfeeding being harmful. Mm-hmm. Because that's just made up. That's like stuff that's made up in this culture that is rooted in all kinds of dysfunction.
Yeah. Over somebody else's discomfort.
Right.
And somebody else's opinion. And we've said it a zillion times. You get pregnant, everybody thinks they can give you an opinion on what you should be doing.
Yeah, totally.
In your parenting, not just breastfeeding, but just parenting. And you just got to learn from a very, very early stage to tune some of that stuff out, because they will definitely have an opinion to give you. And it's none of their business. It's not.
Yeah. So hopefully that clears up, why some of us breastfed for so long. And if you're thinking that, that's something that you're going to do, then it's totally normal. And, if somebody's telling you that it's not, that you just want to do it because you want to show off and you want to be extreme and you're addicted to breastfeeding. I'm sorry. I've heard it and it's just so funny to me.
You want to show off. I know. I've heard that one too. And I'm just like, what is that even? I don't understand that at all.
I don't know.
I want to show off.
Yeah. There's real reasons why people, that people are letting breastfeeding relationships go on longer than what is culturally normal. Mm-hmm. Because culturally normal and biologically normal are two completely different things.
That's right. It is. So you do you, mamas.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.